A pathologist is a specialist physician who diagnoses diseases, and that can be done through a variety of methods like laboratory tests or tissue biopsies, even autopsies. So there's a whole variety of tools we have to be able to diagnose diseases, and that allows for deciding the best treatments and the prognosis. There are 5 pathologists here in our group in North Bay, and it really provides flexibility. It lets us be able to make all the diagnoses that we need to support all the various specialists that we have, and it allows us to support best the laboratory. A lot of the diagnosis requires specialized equipment, so we're very fortunate to have a well-resourced laboratory here. We offer very current, up-to-date, high-quality results because of the equipment that we do have. Patients don't like to wait for their diagnosis. Understandably, they're anxious and they want to get on with treatment. And so it's very important to try to get these results available as quickly as possible.
It's funny when you ask people, you say, oh, I work in the lab, and they'll all say, oh, you take blood, and it's so much more than that, right? So when someone comes into the hospital, that's usually the person they'll see. They're our front line, they're our face of the lab, and they'll have a rapport with the patients. In the lab itself, the technologists, they're the ones who are not really seen, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. We have the full discipline lab in our hospital. You know, a lot of other hospitals will only have a core lab, chemistry, hematology, blood bank. We have all the disciplines here. We're so fortunate that you can get access to a lot of testing here at our site. We do have our first point is always the specimen collection by the technicians. And not only collected, but remember, we also support other hospitals that have smaller labs. So those staff members are getting all these specimens all day long coming from all over the place, and then they're making sure that the specimen is suitable, there's enough specimen for the testing, that it's been maintained at the right temperature, and that everything's perfect about it, the right orders, and then they pass it off to each discipline. Chemistry and hematology are the most popular lab disciplines, where they'll do things like your CBC and INR, your glucose, your TSH test. You think you have a heart attack, they'll do your troponin level, things like that. That's the bulk of the work. And then, of course, blood bank is another part of the core lab, and they take care of all transfusion services. And not only that, but the transfusion technologist maintains that blood level inventory, making sure that we have enough blood on hand to support the hospital in our day-to-day operations, but any kind of traumas as well. So they're really babysitting every unit of blood because we don't want to waste anything. And then microbiology, which does every kind of cultures and antibiotic susceptibility. That area there will work closely with the internist on really complex infections. And then we have cytology, which does pap smears and non-gynecological workup for abnormalities, as does histology. Those are primarily tissues, and that's usually for consideration whether something is benign or malignant. The pathologist will then, based on what they're seeing, require further testing or further staining, and then that way there they can narrow down their diagnosis. We do report our metrics to Cancer Care Ontario, and we've consistently met best in the province for what Cancer Care Ontario requires, and also by meeting our turnaround times to getting the final result back. 70% of your medical decisions are based on lab results, so lab services are so important in the patient care. We do about 1 million tests a year overall in the whole lab, and I think last year we did over 36,000 COVID tests. You know, we're fortunate that we were able to secure a few different platforms for COVID testing. And so because we have these instruments, we were able to stop routing any specimens outside of our community.
It was a lot of work to get these tests up and running. We had to act quickly, and very successfully we've been able to support a very busy COVID assessment center, still keeping our attention on the cancer diagnosis and those other very important pieces, but have added this additional work to respond to the COVID pandemic. But that was a great challenge, and the donors really supported the laboratory to be able to gear up to address this challenge. The laboratory equipment generally has a service life of about 7 years. It depends on the specific piece of equipment and the specific company, but more or less it's about 7 years. So just to keep offering the current testing, the equipment needs to be continuously replaced. When we look at adding new tests, or as technology changes and improves, new testing becomes available, then we'll often have to purchase new equipment to be able to add those capabilities to the lab. So there's a couple of considerations. There's the maintenance of our capabilities, and then there's the idea of being able to expand our capabilities by acquiring new equipment or adding capabilities, components to our existing equipment.
Our laboratory and our diagnostic imaging department were beneficiaries of incredible investment through the Cancer Care Close to Home campaign. That has a long-standing legacy. In fact, it helped us prepare for the pandemic that we didn't know was going to happen at the time. It's resulted not only in our ability to do incredible service locally with probably the fastest turnaround times in the north when we needed it the most.
What happens at our lab is nothing short of fascinating. It's such an integral part in making sure that we have diagnostic ability close to home. Our community raised more than $6.3 million and purchased many medical equipment devices that are having an impact each and every day. Thank you to our community for supporting the Cancer Care Close to Home campaign and the Urgent Care Fund for COVID-19. Your impact on the lab is exponential. We can't thank you enough for your generosity.